Hello and welcome back to the Chronicles of a Gooner, the Arsenal podcast, brought to you by the last man standing with loserpool.com. As ever, I am your host, Harry Symeou, and I'm joined this evening on this live stream by two fantastic guests. I'm joined by Mike Stavrou from Love Sport Radio. Mike, how you doing, mate?
I'm good, Harry. How are you, man? I'm good. I'm very good.
Can't it? Not too bad, Mike. Your audio's lagging a little bit there. I thought, what's going on here? I'm also joined by Chris Davison. Chris, welcome back. How are you?
Yeah, cheers, Harry. I'm well, thank you. How are you?
Good. Not too bad, mate. Not too bad. Pleasure having you both on the show. Lots to discuss, as always, in this transfer silly season. Let's start off with the news that Dani Ceballos is set to join Arsenal on a season-long loan. Chris, your initial thoughts on this? It's not officially been announced yet, but it's as good as, isn't it?
Yeah, it seems that way. For me, very talented, player. Obviously, really done well with the Spanish under-21s. The European Championships a few weeks ago, was one of their best players. He's a very good technical player, can score goals, got a fantastic eye for a pass, works hard, great dribbler. I think ever since, I think I mentioned it to you before, Harry. I've said all along, when Ramsey left, it was inevitable that we needed another central midfielder, that we would go for one, and it looks like Ceballos is our man. I know it looks like it's only going to be a loan to start off with, but if things all go well, if he enjoys his time at the club, who knows what can happen next summer? There's always a chance it could be made permanent, but we'll see. I'm really happy that he's coming in. I think he'll be a fantastic player for us.
Taking all things to account, we're told that we've got a limited transfer budget. That's kind of been sort of blown out of the water a little bit by this pursuit of Wilfried Zaha, but we'll come on to that in a few minutes' time. But Mike, somebody like Dani Ceballos on a loan is probably the best we could hope for at the minute. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it's very shrewd business, Harry. I think it's the wise move to go for players that are not going to blow the budget. And someone like Saliba, someone like Ceballos, who are young, they're hungry, and I just hope that we can negotiate with him if he has a really good season. We can kind of say to Real Madrid, look, we really want him. I really would have loved to see a buyback option, but I understand from Real Madrid's point of view why that's not possible, because, he could have a fantastic season. His value might triple or even quadruple, but it's exciting to have him here. Obviously, I watched a lot of the under-21s World Cup, and he was sensational for Spain. He is a bit more advanced than Ramsey, and he's sort of like a mix of a number 10, number 8, but he also plays on the wing as well. But he's just a dynamic player, and it's really what we need, a bit of pace in our sides. And Unai Emery loves his versatility. So, let's see what happens with him, but it's good news.
Yeah, absolutely. No question about that. He's somebody that, of course, we're all excited about, and fingers crossed we hear an announcement, if not later on this evening, then tomorrow or the day after. The sooner the better. A couple of comments coming in live. Thank you to all of you who are watching us live at the minute, and thank you to those who will be watching this on the replay too. First comment comes from Donald Martin. Let's put that up on the screen there. He says, defenders. I think that's an area that needs a serious upgrade. Chris, is there a danger that we're getting a little bit carried away with the likes of Ceballos, the pursuit of Wilfried Zaha, and in actual fact, the only defender we've signed is someone that we're going to come on to speak about in a minute, but someone who looks as though he's going to be going on loan to Saint Etienne for the season?
Yeah, I think with the Saliba deal, I've been looking at it in two ways. We're getting a very good, upcoming, talented central defender, very highly rated, who will, be continuing his development and, back at Saint Etienne next season. So that's good for us. But then at the same time, like we're all saying at the moment, we desperately need defenders to come in for the upcoming season, to come in straight away for us. Obviously, Kieran Tierney, that still seems to be ongoing. I know there's been one or two whispers that it's off, but I still believe we haven't heard the end of that one just yet. And there has been talk about us trying to get a defender on loan, possibly, as well as Saliba. So we'll have to see. I think obviously it's going to be a last 16 days. I think it is now, with lots of twists and turns, maybe, and anything is possible in the last couple of weeks. So, I think we'll definitely strengthen in the defensive areas as yet. But who will come in for us remains to be seen.
Before we talk about Saliba, let's talk about Kieran Tierney. A comment's coming there from Eric. Apparently, no more Tierney either now. Neil Lennon was on Sky Sports News earlier. He was giving a press conference and he was asked about the Tierney thing. And he confirmed that Arsenal have only made 2 bids. They've not been back after the second one. And, at the moment, Arsenal failed to meet Celtic's valuation. Now, he also sort of emphasised the point that Celtic are not in a position where they need to sell. They're in a pretty good financial state. Mike, is there a danger that with all our penny pinching and the fact that we won't pay the £25 million up front, we're going to lose out on this player?
I mean, this has always been an issue for us, Harry. You know that. And I think I just heard a baby crying in the background. And if I see Serk Lasnach and Mustafi in the starting 11 for the game against Newcastle, that's going to be me screaming my head off.
Yeah, that was my son. I apologise.
Yeah, I mean,
little shit.
I agree with him. Like when I see Arsenal defend, I want to cry too. So, but yeah, with Tierney, I mean, just get the deal done. He's one of a very extremely highly rated left back. I'm only second at Scotland to Andy Robertson, who was arguably one of the best left backs on the planet last season. So just get the deal done. I mean, all these things with staggered payments, I understand where they're coming from because we haven't got the finances up front to pay for it now. But when you're risking losing out on a player, and to me personally, I think around 25 million is a pretty good deal, considering what some teams are paying for defenders in this current climate. So just get the deal done, because at this late stage, if that doesn't go through, we've got 2 weeks left now, we're going to be searching for another defender to bring in, and it's just going to be too late. It's not going to be the transfer we want. And as you said, you're at risk. It's like going to a market and saying, all right, I want this price. The lower and lower you get, at some point the seller's just going to say, forget about it.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a really interesting point, actually, that's just come in live now from the Indian Gooner. He says, I think Arsenal are expecting Tierney to force a move. Chris, I kind of think that too. I think that Arsenal have gone in there in hope of unsettling Kieran Tierney, a little bit like what we've done with Wilfried Zaha, in the sense that the clout of Arsenal Football Club might be enough to get this player to kick up a stink and want the move away. But Kieran Tierney might be a little bit different. It feels like he's the kind of guy that really loves Celtic. And he's obviously so young that he may not feel that this move is necessary right now. What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, like you say, it's an interesting one. Kieran Tierney said in the past he loves Celtic. It's his boyhood club, and he loves playing for them. But at the same time, we've also heard one or two people say that he really wants to show himself in the Premier League and prove himself in the Premier League, and it's something that he'd be excited by. So it's interesting to see what will happen next. There was speculation that this third bid had gone in. It didn't progress after that, and it was rejected, and that was that. But like you said, Neil Lennon's since come out and said that there's only been 2 bids. So we could still be preparing this third bid, waiting to see what Kieran Tierney says and what he wants to do. And like Mike was touching on, he's a fantastic player that I would really like to see at Arsenal Football Club as well. Kolasinac has struggled in recent seasons, and he's been a little bit disappointing. And it's the same with Monreal. He's sort of past his best maybe, and you can't really see him doing enough for us moving forward. So a left back we need, and hopefully, fingers crossed, we can still get a deal for Tierney over the line. But it's going to be interesting to see how it develops.
Absolutely. What about William Saliba, Mike? We've spoken about this on a previous podcast. We've spoken about the fact that it feels like Arsenal are not really addressing the concerns that we have immediately. Are you excited by the prospect of Saliba and what the future may hold?
Yeah, I'm excited, Harry, because it's someone that's so highly regarded by a lot of the French press, especially. I've heard so many reports of him saying he is one of the most exciting young prospects. I mean, he's got everything at the age of 18 in potential-wise. Obviously, hasn't quite reached it, but in terms of height, he's up there. He's quick. He's good on the ball. He's a good passer. He's very composed. So I think that's exactly what he needs. A full year of playing in a French league, and then he'll come back a better player. But of course, that does take away from the fact that we need defenders now. As I was saying, if Mustafi is going to play a big part in the season, I'm going to be pretty annoyed. And I think the main issue here is the lack of being able to sell our players. So people like Mustafi, Koscielny, these are players that I think quite clearly we want to get rid of. But either there's not the buyers because their stock is team is that bad. But I think, we have to give it a bit of a chance. We've spoken a lot in the past couple of weeks about this weekend do you movement, and Josh Kroenke came out and said, believe in the system. And in a sense, we do have to give them a little bit of a chance because he put into place this new leadership structure after Arsene Wenger went. And this seems like William Saliba is the kind of transfer that we wouldn't have seen under Arsene Wenger, and maybe under this new leadership where we're going for more young and dynamic players, this might be the way forward. So personally, I'm looking forward to it. But do we need to fill a gap right now? Yes. How do we do that? I think personally, instead of bidding 55 million for Wilfried Zaha, use some of that money on a defender, because that's really where we need it. I mean, it's clear for everyone to see. We've been screaming it from the rooftops for years and years. So that, for me, that's where I think the money should go.
Yeah, I don't disagree with any of that. Let's have a look at some of your comments coming through. Here we go. Brandon Jason Grosso says, Tierney has that steel mentality. Going back to Kieran Tierney, he played with a broken jaw. That's exactly what our cowardly defence needs. Let's see what else we've got here. Another one from Brandon Jason. He says, Ceballos and Saliba are quality signings. At least we're identifying good players. We could be signing a lot worse. Yeah, I agree with that. Don't really disagree with that. Let's see what else we've got. Gunners, boys. I think we should give Mustafi one more season. Chris, what do you make of that?
No. that's my simple answer to that one. I just look. He's had enough opportunities now to prove himself, and he's just constantly letting us down. Really, he's constantly making mistakes. He's not consistent enough. And he's cost us games in the past. For example, Palace at home last season. So for me, he's not good enough. For me, he hasn't made the cut here at Arsenal Football Club. I don't see him doing that in the future as well. And when it's possible, and if the opportunity arises, we need to offload. It might sound harsh to a few people, but it's just how I feel about it, how I feel about him as a player, and yeah, that's it.
Well, some of our other viewers agree with you. You can see what Lanslin thinks of it, and you can hear what Daryl thinks of it as well. So it seems that we're all in agreement that he should.
Maybe he meant it was someone else, Harry, because he spelled it with a H in there, so and a P. So I don't know. Maybe he's thinking of some other youth player that we've got that we need to try and bring through. So yeah, maybe we should give him a chance.
Possibly. Let's see how it goes. Right, let's have a little bit of a more detailed look into Dani Ceballos. First of all, I'm going to bring up some information on Dani Ceballos. Going to try this screen sharing business. Never done this before. For the purpose of those of you listening via the audio, I'll read out what it is we're looking at now. Dani Ceballos, born on August the 7th, 1996, 22 years old. 1.79 meters tall, position midfielder, midfield, right-footed player currently with Real Madrid, and he joined them from Real Betis for a fee of around £14.85 million. Let's have a look. In La Liga last season, he made 23 appearances, scoring 3 goals. That's a fair amount of appearances, isn't it, for somebody who's, on the fringes of the Real Madrid side? Mike, would you not say?
Yeah, I mean, look how difficult that team is to get into. I know they've not quite been themselves over the last few seasons, but if he's being picked for Real Madrid, arguably the best team in the world, I mean, you only got to think he's got to be a good player. I've got to admit, I've not seen too much of him other than at the Under-21 World Cup, but he's going to have quality there, and ultimately that's what we need. But youth and dynamism, I think, is the more important thing, and hunger. Because don't forget, if he's going to be coming over on a season-long loan, he's still effectively proven himself not only to us, but to Zinedine Zidane, who's going to be watching him and thinking, hang on, am I going to want to put him into my plans for the season after? So I think on both fronts, he's going to have pressure on him and he's going to have to perform. I just hope it's not another Denis Suarez situation, Harry, where he comes in and gets injured and doesn't really want to be there and doesn't really want to play. I can't see that happening, but fingers crossed.
Yeah, be interesting to see. Let's look at the other player that we're supposedly, we've supposedly already done the deal for, and that's William Saliba. Chris, going to come to you on this one. Let me share the screen again. Let's have a quick look at some information on William Saliba. Loving this new tool, by the way. Still getting used to it. Hopefully, I'll get faster as we go. But yeah, William Saliba. Let's have a look. Date of birth, born in 2001. Wow, that makes me feel old. Age 18, 1.93 meters. He's got Cameroon citizenship as well. I didn't know that. Defender, centre back, right footed. Current club AS Saint Etienne, as we know. He's come through the ranks there. 16 appearances in Ligue 1 last season. That's not that many, is it? It's not that many, considering sort of the hype train that is following this player around. I'm not saying that he's no good, but that's not really a lot of appearances, is it, for someone that's so highly rated? But, I guess maybe loaning him back is the right thing for him and his development, but it's not necessarily the right thing for Arsenal, is it, Chris?
No, possibly not. Obviously, like we said, we need defenders to come in now. But 16 appearances, not a lot, but he's obviously done very well in those 16 appearances to get this hype around him now. I can't remember who it was. You might know yourself, but there was one other Saint Etienne defender who was praising William Saliba up the other day and said how he quickly just blew up in his development. So that just obviously goes to show how quickly he did develop last season and how impressive he was in sort of not many appearances. Like Mike touched on a moment ago, he's tall, he's strong, quite pacey, so he's going to bring something a little bit different to our defence. Like we've been saying, I'm excited to see him in the future, and we'll be watching his development closely at Saint Etienne next season. But of course, it's just not as ideal as Arsenal would have hoped. I guess with concerning imminent people coming in immediately and helping out the team for the upcoming season, because the defence quite simply is our most weakest position in the squad. Like Mike also said a moment ago, I would, as much as I would like a winger to come in, because Iwobi, Mkhitaryan haven't overly been convincing for us in recent times. Still, for me, the priority should be the defence. So I'd rather us spend 50, 60 million pounds on a centre back to come in straight away to really give us a chance to compete against the top four next season, and give us better chances of winning silverware and competing against the top teams. Because I personally think that without strengthening in the key positions, we're not gonna do that. We're not gonna compete, and that's what we need to see now. We need to see that the main positions, the key positions that has been letting this team down for a while now, strengthened.
Yeah, don't disagree with that. So we've established that Ceballos is on his way to Arsenal. Fingers crossed there won't be any hiccups in that. I've seen a couple of pictures flying around on social media of him in an Arsenal shirt. Don't know if they're genuine or not. It's amazing what you can do with Photoshop these days. We also understand that William Saliba is close to completing the move to the Arsenal as well, but he'll be loaned back to Saint Etienne. We know that we're in deadlock with Celtic regarding Kieran Tierney, so we're going to have to wait and see what happens on that. I agree with the comment that came earlier on regarding the fact that I think Arsenal are trying to get the player to force the move himself, trying to unsettle him, but it may not work in this case. Now, just finally, our final topic, this man, Wilfried Zaha. We heard yesterday that another bid had been rejected. Mike, it looks as though Crystal Palace are going to try and hold out for that £80 million. Would you spend £80 million on Wilfried Zaha? Because I'm struggling to accept that we live in a world where Wilfried Zaha costs £80 million.
Absolutely not. And I think one of the points that was made to me that I agree with, it's just like the new executives trying to lay down a marker and say, actually, we're going for a marquee player, rather than thinking about what would be best for the squad in terms of on the pitch, rather than, on brand, or will appease the fans by bringing in a big name. Almost similar to how the previous regime did with Mesut Ozil, keeping him just because we couldn't afford to lose him and Alexis Sanchez in the same window. in the same sense, I think £80 million on Zaha, if you were to go for Everton Suarez, who would cost around 30 million, you'd still have another 40 million left or 50 million left to spend on other players. So for me, it's bizarre. And the updated bid that I saw yesterday was that I think it was 55 million plus 10 million add-ons, but also chucking in Reece Nelson to go on loan to Crystal Palace, which I think would be an awful move because he's spent a year out in the Bundesliga, done quite well, scored quite a lot of goals, been involved under a really good coach, Julian Nagelsmann. I think he needs to come back and get into the first team. So it's almost like cutting off your nose to spite your face. And I really see it as a bad move, Harry, because in terms of how you can manage the finances, I'm sure Zaha's wage demands won't be cheap either. So I think it's a really dangerous move to make. And if they're not going to accept 55, then I think that's the complete shut off. I think no more than that. I mean, it could sort of be argued for around that fee, but for me, no. I don't think he's that good of a player to warrant that price tag.
Yeah, no, I agree. And Brandon in the comments says, hell no, I'd rather play Nelson.
Yeah.
So we can see what he thinks about that bid. Coming back to Brandon again, he says, it will be insane to spend 60 plus million on Zaha and not get Tierney when we could get Everton for 30 million and Tierney. Bad allocation of funds. Indian Gooner says, I feel Arsenal fans have overhyped Nelson. I actually agree with you on that one, mate. I think that Reece Nelson has shown glimpses of promise. During his time in Germany, he was good for periods of time, but he wasn't consistent throughout the season, particularly in the second half of the season. And I think that we are placing a lot of emphasis on this player and a lot of hope, I should say, on this player. Another comment coming in from Jose Donko. He says, Ceballos isn't a goal-scoring midfielder. They definitely went stale the last 2-3 seasons since Betis, but the move could rejuvenate his career. Fingers crossed it rejuvenates Arsenal as well. Right, we're going to go over to Twitter for some questions from you guys. Now, those of you that are watching live, now's your opportunity to leave your questions in the comments section whilst I pick a few from Twitter for our two guests this evening. Let's have a quick browse. Hold on, let's share the screen again. Apologies for those of you listening on the audio because you probably don't know what on earth I'm talking about. Here we go. Let's go to our earlier post where we asked you guys for questions. Let's head over to the Chronicles page. Here we go. Right. So this first question I'm going to put to you, Mike. Who should Ceballos partner in midfield, Torreira or Xhaka? And that's from Radiohead TIM.
Ooh, it depends on the system. I think almost you could fit Ceballos, Torreira, and Xhaka in the same team because, as I was saying, Ceballos can play as a number 10 and a creative midfielder. So I think Arsenal will play 4-2-3-1 this coming season. So I think he could get in as part of that midfield three with Xhaka and Torreira. I think moving forward as a sort of young, dynamic midfield, we could be looking at a midfield three of Guendouzi, Ceballos, and Torreira or someone of the like. But for now, this season, I think it'll be those three for me.
Yep. Okay. Interesting stuff. Let's head over to the questions that Chris's tweet will have dragged in because Chris has got a much bigger following on Twitter than I have. That's pretty much the same sort of question. I like this one from the Durham Gooner. Why is Mustafi anywhere near our first team? Chris, is it
if I had the answer to that one, well,
is it as simple as the fact that we just can't sell him? Is it that simple?
Yeah, possibly. I mean, I think it was reported a little while back that Arsenal have been trying to sell him for a few seasons. I think it was David Ornstein who said that. So it seems that way. And to be honest, who could blame him, Harry, who wanted to buy him after some of his performances? But we'll see what happens. There was obviously talk that he could be moved on this window, but yeah, I'm struggling to see that. I can't really see that happening now. So we'll just have to wait and see. Concerning another centre back coming in, will Koscielny's situation, change that quite possibly? I'm hoping that will be sort of solved quite soon, because I think that's the last thing that the club needs heading into a new season or for the new season. Will Callum Chambers still be an Arsenal player come the first day of the season? We'll have to wait and see. So yeah, I think obviously Holding's coming back from injury. Hopefully Emery sees him and Socrates as the sort of two partnership as a centre back for next season, because I think they're probably our best centre backs at the club at the moment.
Yep, don't disagree with any of that. This is an interesting question. I'm going to put this one to you, Mike. This one comes from Wayne Davis. Don't know whether you have discussed, but what about Bielik as someone to invest in? Would you be doing what you can to keep Christian Bielik at the club, Mike?
Personally, I think he's another one that's sort of been overhyped in terms of they've seen his name and he's had a decent spell at Charlton, but what people need to understand is that League One is a very low standard compared to the Premier League, and it's almost impossible to play at that level and then jump straight back in. I know a lot of Charlton fans who have said to me, yeah, I mean, he's a good player, but the important distinction is that he played in midfield, in defensive midfield role. I think we'd be looking for him to play in the centre-back role, so that's completely different. And as I said, you're making a big jump from League One to the Premier League. I think people need to do their research more when they're looking at these players. I mean, to have an opinion on Reiss Nelson, you can watch the Bundesliga and you would have seen him that he, as you said, Harry, people will look at the stats and say, well, we scored 9-10 goals. He must have blown it up. Well, actually, he didn't. He had a few good months at the beginning of the season, and then after that, he trolled off. He had a few issues with the coach. And like Bielik, it's very easy to say on paper, he's gone on loan, he had a good season, and now let's come back and put him straight into the team. But it doesn't really work like that. So the answer to the question is no, I don't think he's a massive cog in the team.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I don't think that it's as big a loss to us as people are making it out. I think I said on a podcast right at the start of the summer that I thought that he wouldn't get the guarantees he wanted. He's been very vocal, hasn't he, Chris, about saying, I want this, I want that, I want to be in the first team, I want to play X amount of games. But the reality is that, like Mike said, this guy's coming from Charlton, hasn't been good enough for Arsenal in the past. Yes, he's developed, but if you're Unai Emery, there is no way that you can guarantee him that sort of game time, is there?
No, not at all. And obviously, he can either play defensive midfield or as a centre defender. We've got quite a few central defenders at the moment. Obviously, Torreira came in for a sort of a defensive midfielder role, and Callum Chambers can play there if he stays. Xhaka can, although obviously that's not his best position. So yeah, it wouldn't be easy for him to get regular first team football. I think there is a talented player in there somewhere. But it would have been interesting to see him pre-season, but obviously that hasn't been the case because he was playing with the Poland under 21 national team. So yeah, it's looking unlikely that he'll stay at the club or certainly play first team football at the club next season. Whether he comes back from his holiday and trains with the first team and impresses obviously remains to be seen. But wouldn't surprise me if he got another loan move away or a permanent move in the end.
Yep, I agree with that. Let's go to our final question of this evening's stream. The Indian Gooner, which winger would you let go on loan if we sign Zaha? We have too many young players in that position. Mike, I'm assuming he's talking about the likes of Reiss Nelson, Bukayo Saka, etc., etc. I don't know if you include Iwobi there, Mkhitaryan there. Who would sort of make way?
That's a tough one. I know there was some comments that Alex Iwobi wasn't particularly happy with some articles in the Sun and the Mail Online, said he'd be forced to quit if Zaha came in. I don't really think that's the case. I don't think he was really saying that. I think that Iwobi's been a really important player for us over the last two seasons. Make of him what you will. He divides opinion. Maybe he's not a world-class player, but he's put in a good shift. And for me, been one of the players that seems to really care and really, put in effort every single time I've seen him play. So in terms of players going out, I want to keep Nelson. I think he's really exciting, really, really dynamic, and he can have an impact. He's good at one-on-one situations. So I'll definitely keep him. I'll keep Iwobi. If we get a new winger in, The one I'd like to see go out is Bukayo Saka. I think he's really talented and he's been a really good player for on 23s. I know, Harry, you've seen him play a few times. But I think he just needs that experience. He's only 17, 18, so he needs that year on loan, and I don't think he'd really be reaching the first team squad. One of the ones that hasn't really been talked about is Javier Mechi, who's another of the under 23s. Yes. There was rumours that he might be leaving, and I think that would be a massive loss. So I think with players like that, we really need to tie them down to contracts and then send them out on loan and see what kind of player they are when they come back. But for me, it would probably be Saka.
Okay. Right, that brings us to the end of this evening's stream. Chris, do you want to let our listeners know how they can find you on social media?
Yeah, sure. On Twitter, my Twitter is @CDavison_AFC. That's my Twitter, and I'm obviously just keeping all the fans up to date with everything Arsenal.
Mike, how can people keep up with you?
Yeah, so @Mike_Stavrou, which is STAVROU.
Great stuff. Don't forget to hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the little bell icon too next to the subscribe button, and that way you'll never miss an upload or a notification when we go live. The fans phone in will be back next week. As I've said previously, we'll be doing this fortnightly throughout the summer, but once the season kicks in, we'll be doing this on a weekly basis. So keep following us on social media for updates on that. That brings us to the end of today's Chronicles AFC Daily. Ceballos, lost my words there, and Saliba set to sign for Arsenal, apparently, but we haven't heard anything yet. We'll be back very soon with another video and another podcast. Until then, guys, take care.